tow truck driver. It's not traditionally a job you would associate with gruesomeness. But let me tell you, I have seen some things that would send you into shock. I've seen a woman impaled through a rod, and she was still trying to call her work to say she would be late. I've seen bodies split in two, crushed skulls and severed heads. The odd thing is that, despite the carnage, nothing ever left me truly scarred. I've seen the most gruesome things imaginable, and then slept a full 8 hours. Nothing could ever break me. That was until 3 nights ago. The night I saw something that cannot be pushed into the back of my mind. Something that cannot be unseen. I was on the night shift on patrol as always. It was just after 11 p.m, and it was what we call in the business the reaping hours. People start to trail out of the bars and often make stupid decisions. Most of them end up in a ditch or on the curb pulled up by police. A simple inconvenience for them, and a solid profit for us. It was at 11:13 that the call came in. There was a car accident on Side Road 15 by Ramara Woods. I was close by, so I wasted no time in driving out there. As I left the city limits, the night became steadily darker. No one wanted to invest in street lamps in the woods, so they settled on putting them only on intersections. You don't realize how dark country roads get without lights, and that is likely what caused this accident. I drove through the dark trees and a small, childlike fear ran over me. Ramara Woods suffered the fate of almost all rural woodlands in that there were countless stories of it being haunted. The stories ranged from ghosts, werewolves, and even a witch's coven existing in its depths. It was all completely ridiculous once you became an adult, but that didn't stop the goosebumps from rushing over my skin. A strange fog began drifting from the woods, in spite of the July heat. The woods run cold. It's from the spirits. If you can see your breath, then they are standing right behind you. An unknown voice from my childhood rang out through my brain. I know it was superstition, but I found fear slinking through me like a snake all the same. The mist continued to grow thicker, and I was forced to turn on my fog lights. That was when I saw the car on the side of the road with the emergency lights on. I immediately pulled over, turning on my own four ways. I got out into the strangely chilly night. The forest was alive with the sounds of nature. Crickets chirped and frogs bellowed in the distance. A slow breeze made its way through the trees, setting the branches dancing. The way they swayed, it unnerved me, and I quickened my pace to the damaged vehicle. As I drew closer, I found myself frozen in my tracks. The car was absolutely demolished. All the windows were broken, and long scratches were all over the metal. However, something was missing. From everything I could see, there was no cause for the damage. The driver hadn't hit a tree. There were no skid marks in the road. There was nothing. I went to the front of the vehicle, and there was no dents or any point of impact. What the hell happened here? I asked myself. Before I could question anything else, a set of approaching red and white lights interrupted my thoughts. The ambulance had arrived, and I found myself feeling ashamed. In my shock of seeing the damaged car, I forgot all about its driver. I rushed to the broken window, and what I saw was a horrific sight. The man driving the car lay across the front seat, covered in blood and scratches. The interior seats were shredded beyond repair, and even the rearview mirror was all smashed up. I called to the driver, but he did not respond. However, I could hear slow, labored breathing. I knew he was still alive. The paramedics ran up with a stretcher, and I got out of the way to let them get to work. They wheeled the man out, and I could see the extent of the damage. The man was lucky to be alive, if he managed to survive the night. It seemed like every inch of his body was bleeding. Underneath the torn clothes, I could see 5 long scratches. In an instant, I knew those were not made by broken glass. They were too straight, too perfect. I looked up, and to my shock, the man's eyes were staring right at me. He bolted up extremely fast for a man in his condition. He grabbed me by the collar and he glared at me. "Don't look," he said. I shook my head in fear. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stare," I exclaimed. He gripped me tighter and pulled me mere inches from his face. "Don't look, don't see. Once you look, you're finished. Eyes down, don't look, don't see." He repeated this over and over. One of the paramedics jabbed him with a needle, and in seconds, the man was unconscious. His grip fell, and they rolled him away. I just stood in shocked silence for a few minutes. Finally, one of the paramedics came back and asked if I was all right. "I'm fine. Just, what was he on about?" The paramedic shrugged. "Shock and delirium can make a person crazy. Don't take anything too much to heart." I nodded, and the two of us surveyed the scene. "What could have done this?" I asked. "Maybe he stopped to piss and a bear attacked him," the paramedic suggested. I merely shook my head. There's no animal out here that would have done something like this. The paramedic left, and when the ambulance pulled away, I felt my fear returning. The woods felt creepy tonight, and I was beginning to get a feeling that I was not alone out here. I rushed back to my truck like a frightened child. I just wanted to get this job done and get back to the comfort of the city lights. I put my truck in reverse and I checked in my rearview mirror. What I saw froze me in place. Someone was standing in the road behind me. I couldn't see them very well in the dark, but they were extremely tall and lanky. The proportions of the limbs did not look human. I turned myself around and I looked out the back window. To my surprise, the road was completely empty. I should have felt relief, but the emptiness only put me more on edge. I began to feel as though I was losing my mind. I turned back around again, and in the mirror, the figure had returned. Only this time, it was standing right beside my truck. I was now completely frozen in fear, staring back at the man. Man, however, was the wrong word. This was a monster. It had long and slimy black hair draped over its wide shoulders. Its skin was a brownish grey. It was extremely thin, almost skeletal. It stood over 6.5 feet and bore impossibly long claws. Slowly, it began to lurch forwards towards the cab. I began to silently sob into the night. I looked at my driver's side window, waiting for this thing to appear, but it didn't. I started to believe that I simply imagined it, but that was when I looked in the side mirror. There it stood, right outside my door. And yet, there was nothing outside the window. It leaned closer, and I could make out its face for the first time. It had elongated ears, and nothing but the skeletal outline of a nose. Its eyes were piercing blue, with no pupils. I turned my head, and it was almost like my eyes separated their vision. The left looked out the window and saw nothing. The right saw the mirror and looked into the face of the beast. The right watched as it raised its long claw and dragged it across my window. The left watched as scratches simply appeared from an invisible force. This thing could only be seen through mirrors. I watched as the beast gave a sinister grin, flashing flat, rotted teeth. Then it thrust its arm forward, smashing the glass. In my panic, my feet left the brake, and I had forgotten that I had left the truck in reverse. That is undoubtedly what saved my life. The truck lurched back, and I could feel something sharp rake across my forehead. Another half inch, and I would have been shredded in an instant. Instinct took me over, and I slammed my foot on the gas. I can't be sure that it wasn't the sound of gravel under my wheels, but I thought I heard the sound of an angry growl. I twisted the wheel around and managed to do a 180. I pelted the gas and got myself out of there as fast as I could. I didn't dare check any of my mirrors the whole drive. I kept my head down and I did not look. In the days that have followed, I have not managed more than minutes of sleep at a time. Every time I do, I see those luminescent blue eyes and those phantom scratches. I have covered every mirror in my home, and I no longer do my checks when I'm driving. If not for the broken window and the gash on my head, I would swear I dreamed the whole thing. The scar on my forehead will always be a reminder of my terror. Earlier this evening, I decided to do some research on the forest, but I found no more than the same childhood rumors. However, I did find a statistic that has made me want to change professions. That side road has an extremely high concentration of accidents. All accidents. No collisions.